to Just Minding My Business Radio, where we are moving at the speed of God, learning what we didn't know we didn't know. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
So grab a pen and paper and get ready for information that you can use.
Hello, and welcome to Just Minding My Business Media with your host,
Ida Crawford.
And myself, Ruth Haskins, as co-host. We hope you have found joy in your day and are able to find many reasons for gratitude. Today, we have coming to the mic, Martina Gollin-Graves, MSW, as President and CEO with Mental Health America of Wisconsin. Her work is driven by MHA's commitment to promote mental health as a critical part of overall wellness. This includes prevention services, early identification and intervention for those at risk, and integrated care and treatment for those who need it, with recovery as the goal. Martina has led statewide initiatives for improving mental wellness for more than 10 years. Martina's advocacy efforts support suicide prevention as co-founder of the Prevent Suicide Greater Milwaukee Coalition, and access to recovery-oriented services for peer mentors through her work with the Milwaukee Mental Health Task Force. So welcome, Martina. Welcome back, I should say.
Yes, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you, Ida. Thank you, Ruth. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we are in the COVID-19 mode. So mental health is really, really huge right now. I mean, even though I look at myself as somebody who's pretty stable, but there are days where this COVID-19 thing has an effect on me. So in your business, how is that? What is happening during this pandemic in your business?
That's such a important and interesting question. It's been really interesting. So I think initially mental health professionals like myself and others were really worried about people who had existing mental health disorders. And interestingly, what we're finding as time goes on is that people who are or were connected to services prior to the pandemic are faring better than those who weren't. And so people who didn't necessarily have a diagnosis or any history of mental health issues are really finding themselves struggling with anxiety and in some cases depression. So that's a little bit different than what I think people originally thought.
Yes. And I can see that because, we've been, going back and forth to work, hustle, bustle, and now we're at a place where we're pretty much locked down.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see that for sure. So elaborate a little bit more on that in terms of what you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just been interesting, people's perspectives. And so this forced isolation has really, some people have been able to be reflective and others truly don't have any coping strategies for dealing with the isolation, which is leading to some mental health concerns. And so, the issues that are rising for people are around unemployment. We have parents who are now homeschooling and having to struggle with teaching. In fact, I just had one mom the other day say she has 3 kids and they're all in different grades and they're all in different schools. So grade school, middle school, high school, with different curriculums, and she's just plumb overwhelmed. And she's an educated woman, and she's just struggling with meeting the demands at home as a parent and a wife, and the demands of working from home. So there's all this increased expectation and demand, which I think in retrospect, a few months ago, we all would have been like, oh, that would be nice to work from home all the time and be able to, work in my jammies and be home with the kids more. And people are really, don't normally do that, are really struggling. And so a lot of this is based on the uncertainty around finances, around unemployment, the additional challenges that have come with the normal challenges of parenting.
Absolutely. Yes, because it was like one day you was at work, the next day you working from home, because I've experienced that in my industry. I do IT, and we've had to move an entire company from the office to the work from home. Mm-hmm. And it has been devastating for many.
Yeah. I think in my initial transition, there was a lot of hustle and bustle trying to figure out how to do things from home effectively and make sure that all your employees' needs are met, et cetera. And then especially, we have an outpatient clinic amongst other things, but making sure that the insurance companies and Medicaid would approve the transition and the new way of delivering service from home. So there's all these like different issues that arose. And so it was really chaotic at first and just so much uncertainty. And I think other professions probably experienced that in different ways. And I think we've all kind of settled into a groove, whether we like it or not. We've kind of, most of us have a routine. And for some people, the uncertainty of when is this going to go back to normal, whatever that normal may look like, is now starting to raise fears and worries that people at first were like, oh, this is weird, but I'll do it. And working from home won't be so bad. And now people are like, oh my gosh, when will this be over? And will I have a job? And how on earth is my company going to be able to afford to continue paying its employees because we haven't made any real money, in the last 2 months. So there's a lot of worry right now.
Has there been any evidence of how people are actually responding to exactly what you're saying? Okay, we got through it. We got through the toilet paper panic. All of that got taken care of. But now, okay, the reality is setting in. What are you seeing now? What is
it's a mixed bag. It's a great question. And it's a mixed bag. What is really starting to manifest, and it's where we started the conversation, was that people who were already connected to services, their support systems rallied around them and made sure they had what they needed, whether that was food, whether that was basic needs, whether that was telehealth medicine or telehealth mental health services. It is the people who don't normally seek mental health services that are just, their anxiety is off the Richter scale, and they don't have the coping strategies, nor do they have the supports in place. And some people aren't comfortable talking about, and they don't even have words for it. It's interesting. One of our clients, actually more than one, and I've heard this in different arenas, which is really interesting. People who live with anxiety disorder all the time, their response to the general population's increased anxiety is, welcome to my world. This is what I feel like all the time.
Wow. Okay.
Right? Yes, that was such a insightful moment for me. I was like, huh. So I think there's some lessons to be learned from people who already live with these disorders. I know retired people, they've said this just kind of feels like normal. They kind of miss their maybe weekly outings. But it's not too far away from the norm. So I think different people, it's impacting them differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really just telltale, welcome to my world. Welcome to my world, because, people with anxiety disorders, we've sort of like mentally, in a way, just sideline them. Oh, it's those people. They have a problem. Yeah. Now it's my problem. People are saying, oh, wait a minute, what is this weirdness that I'm going through? And so now it's their problem, and they're like you said, they're afraid to talk about it because you know they have themselves put a taboo or some sort of stigma attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anxiety disorders are very physical. They manifest themselves physically often. And so it may be stomach aches, it may be panic that arises and you feel it in the chest, this constant sense of worry, but it often just manifests itself physical. So if you're not used to that or you haven't had an opportunity to talk with a professional and know what's happening to you, I think people are very worried, and then we have the COVID pandemic happening. So then I know myself, the minute I've sneezed a few times, I'm like, oh my gosh, do I have COVID? Do I have the virus? So right, if unusual things are happening to our bodies and we already have some healthcare worries in our society right now, I think it's just making people worry even more about their health and not understand what might be happening. And not for anxiety, there are behavioral things that you can learn to control the anxiety, and some cognitive and behavioral things that you can learn to make it better. And if you don't have those strategies, and if you don't know anything about that, I can only imagine what people are feeling if they don't have any coping strategies.
Yes.
Can you talk about some of those coping strategies?
Yes,
Are you
exactly.
able to give people a few tips?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, it tends to be manifest itself physical, including for children. So for adults, it's that, you know, generally speaking, that feeling that we all probably can associate with that feeling of butterflies. You know, we've all had something that we were going to do and we felt nervous, but it's a constant state of nervousness, and it starts to feel overwhelming and it starts to rise. And many people talk about it being in their chest and feeling very heavy. And that's not always a panic attack, but it really does start to, it can be in the stomach, it can be in the chest. Children often, their anxiety manifests itself with physical ailments as well. And they usually complain of tummy aches. And just generally not feeling well. And so some of the strategies that people who live with anxiety, they find other things to do to occupy their mind. So that's one of the strategies. For some people, it might be a hobby, it might be music, it might be getting outside. There's some breathing techniques that are really helpful. Mindfulness is a way to calm your inner self and focus and ground yourself so that you're very present in the moment. And that's not something that you learn overnight. But what's nice is that there are actually apps that we can access on our telephone. One of my favorites is the Calming app, and it's called the Calming app, or Calm app, CALM. But it really is focused on teaching mindfulness, which is really great for anxiety. There's also other apps that help with focus to help people calm themselves down, and because sleep sometimes is really hard for people who live with anxiety. They're so wound up. So imagine being worried about something, just normally. You get very wound up, your mind starts racing. And so these are techniques that help you to slow down your thought process and slow down your heart rate and be able to breathe slower. And that's what we try to teach people, is how to dissociate from what you're worried about and focus on internally, slowing down your thoughts, paying attention to your heart, and essentially being able to calm your body.
Okay. That's I feel calmer with you just talking about it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. If you got something to say, you look like you got something.
I was just going to speak to the fact that so many people, one of the things that I'm hearing from people as we Zoom and telephone, is that a lot of times we're not even aware of the fact that we're all wound up. We're not even aware, we think we're coping.
Yes.
Because we've had coping skills, we've coped with everything. But all of a sudden, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not coping as well as I thought I was coping. And it may be a phone call that you get, or the fact that someone comes to your door and they have something, a package for you, and it's not the UPS, it's some, well, I live in a building, so it's maintenance, and they're there with their mask on, their gloves on, and they're literally like trying to get to 6 feet away from you to hand you this. And it's like, all of a sudden, the feeling of isolation is really beginning to impact. And I know that for people who live alone, this is major. For single people, for elderly people. And I had one incident where someone said that, their grandchildren came to visit them, and they, the kids got out of the car to run to grandma, and their mother pulled them back. And this woman said she was just devastated.
Yeah.
Just devastated.
So social distancing is a part of our reality right now, and it's for our safety, and it's important. But the trade-off is that we really are isolated in ways that many of us have no reference point for. Yes. And so we talked a lot about anxiety, which makes sense. I think most of us can understand where that's coming from in this unprecedented time and uncertainty. But it can lead to depression. So even in normal circumstances, someone who lives with anxiety for an extended amount of time, it's usually for 12 months or more, depression automatically accompanies it. But I wonder, in this particular state of affairs, because the worry and the anxiety is exacerbated, if people aren't experiencing depression sooner because of the isolation, which just makes perfect sense to me. And so they're really, some people have great support systems and are able to connect with people virtually, which still isn't the same thing, but it helps. And others just don't have those connections. And so there's no data right now to support what I'm saying, but in our community, in my community, we're starting to get reports of increased suicides. And so I don't want to, start a pandemic worried about increase of suicides, but I think considering this, it's almost like the right recipe for disaster, if you will. People are worried, they're isolated, that isolation and loneliness and fear is just the perfect brew for people to have distorted thoughts and feelings that could lead them down the road to suicide. And so again, I do not have any data that says globally or across the nation, suicides are up. In my community, there has been a slight uptick, which is, we're just looking at a few counties. But I think if for most people, what I'm saying probably makes sense, that we should be worried, especially with people who already, especially the folks that I mentioned, who have no reference point and don't have connections to a mental health provider. They absolutely have no way to figure out how to cope.
Yes. And, and it's not just the everyday people. I know that there was an incident, I'm not sure whether it was in this country or in Great Britain, where a doctor who was in the midst of, the hospital fray of COVID-19, committed suicide, because she just couldn't handle it. She couldn't handle the rate of deaths that were coming in, just like one after the other, and feeling that sense of helplessness. And I think that's one of the other things that's coming up, is a feeling of helplessness. Really, even if you're fairly stable and you're out walking around and you realize, number one, people are not looking at you. People are afraid to smile even. They will not make eye contact. When you go into the grocery store, there are lines in the grocery store, arrows trying to tell you which pattern you have to take.
Yes.
You're trying to stay away from people, and it just feels, sometimes when I do go out, it's like, I just want to go back home. Because home, at least I'm surrounded by something that I know. But the world feels strange. it feels strange. And I think within that strangeness is a feeling of helplessness. And I don't know if you can speak to that and encourage people in some way, because it really is a feeling of helplessness.
And I think you have nailed it on the head. And I don't know, I think we can't prevent people from feeling that sense of helplessness. What I do encourage all of us to start looking for positive things that are happening in our community. What has been really encouraging is even in the face of all this and people feeling helpless, that people are starting to come together around certain issues and recognizing that people are isolated. And, I think we've all seen the Facebook videos of a block, right? Dancing in the middle of the road. Or I just recently heard about it's neighborhood bingo. And they've scavenger hunts and just really cute, innovative things that allow people to continue social distance, but also create this sense of connectedness.
Yes.
I have the cutest story. My next door neighbors, the husband is, the wife just turned 92 and the husband is like 95, 96, and they live alone and they cut their grass they're just active older adults. So but their kids will not let them go anywhere because of course they're vulnerable. So the grandma, she just had her birthday, and the family came over, all the grandkids and great grandkids, and they all stood in the yard 6 feet apart and came to greet grandma and just let her know that they were thinking about her. And so I just love that families and people are being creative and still figuring out how to stay connected. And so it's just important that we continue to think of ways to be together. And Zoom, what would we ever have done without FaceTime and Zoom, right? I mean, that makes a world of difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
I like that. I heard one in Louisiana too. One man pulled his piano out onto the porch, and another person got their little microphone and everything. She's a professional singer. And the neighbor got together, out in the middle of the streets just to listen, and so they entertained them like for an afternoon, So you're right, creativity. Let's talk about that.
And I know that's important to you.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's very important because I believe that creativity, when we use it, when we jump into it, it really brings us life, brings us out of ourselves or into ourselves, one of the two. But creativity is really important. Mm-hmm. And Ida's champion at the bit. She's trying to get in here too. We've been just chatting along.
I know. This is a great topic. And like you, I've seen so many funny things on Facebook and uplifting things. And one of the things for me to keep my positivity flowing is I limit how much of it I watch on television.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like the commercials, same thing. COVID, coronavirus. So I pick a certain time that I'm going to watch just to see what's going on, what the new developments are, and then I turn it completely off and do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm in that mode that I'm watching television, it's going to be something that I select.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's another way of people, keeping that anxiety down is just don't keep looking at it all day.
And that's actually one of the things that mental health providers are telling people is to limit your exposure, because it's just like anything else. When you're bombarded, it becomes overwhelming. And that's even true for kids as well. I think people are worried about their children's mental health as well, because kids, they pick up on our worries. And so limiting the news and the exposure to all the negativity is really important. And speaking of kids, I think some parents are, trying their best to be homeschool teachers. And others are just like, it's not their forte. And I think that's overwhelming in itself, trying to like, oh my gosh, my kids are missing the last 3 months of school. I need to provide everything for them. Because May is Mental Health Month, we're doing some virtual opportunities and for presentations virtually, and this year we're focusing on women's wellness and mental health, and it's a continuation of something we started in February. I am not your superwoman, and really, yeah, right, I didn't think of that. It wasn't me. It was some other wonderful creative soul. But talking about all the ways that women often feel like they have to give, and find themselves feeling empty. And that has never been more apparent to me right now. Women have struggled with this from the beginning of time. But because of COVID, and women, again, feeling like they need to be super mom, super woman, doing everything at home and still maintaining, work-life balance, amidst all of the changes in our society. So we have devoted a 3-part series in May virtually, so it's not local, it's open to everyone, and I'll share that link with you. I'm Not Your Supermom, and then 2 discussions talking about I'm Not Your Superwoman, and the last session will be a talk back panel, but all virtual, and it's an opportunity for not just women to support each other, but also it's an opportunity for men to support the women in their lives and understand. And I think it could have been retitled to I Am Not Your Superwoman / Superman, right? Because I think we're all right now are struggling.
Yes, because I saw some things on TV with single men that are raising children. And this one guy, he had like an autistic child. Then he had another child that had some really deep health issues. And my heart just went out to him because I know what it is to deal with somebody autistic because of the work that I do. Mm-hmm. And it can be overwhelming on a good day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's a lot of factors to consider. The other population that I'm very worried about so we're in the midst of COVID right now and the pandemic and how to make sure people are staying safe or getting tested and getting the treatment that they need. But from a mental health perspective, this is just the beginning. And COVID is not going anywhere anytime soon, and people having to adjust to a new normal. This is all going to be an adjustment. And I think on some level, people just want this to be over in a few weeks. Like it's bad enough that it's gone as long as it has. Yeah. And I think in some people's minds, okay, I just got to get through a few more weeks and then everything will be back to normal. And frankly, I don't think any of us know what the new normal will look like, because it will be a new normal. Yes. All the way from masks to, gloves and social distancing and how we operate at work so that we're keeping, we're maintaining safety. But then my real concern, and we've received some additional funding for this very thing, is to support essential healthcare workers and other essential workers. Mm-hmm. So right now they're all in survival mode because they're the people that go to the store every day, or the cashiers and the people that keep the essential businesses open for all of us, for our convenience, right? And I don't think they really have time to process what's happening and how they feel about having to go to work every day and put themselves and their families at risk, including doctors and nurses and other healthcare. So I'm really worried once things are manageable, more manageable than they are right now, that those folks are going to, in some instances, be traumatized and really be have some issues once they are able to exhale and reflect on what the last 2 to 3 months have looked like for them.
That's very interesting, because
Yes.
I think my thought hadn't really thought about it in that way. My thought had also been about, like you said, people want things to be over with and okay, we'll go back to the new normal. But we all left in a hurry. We exited society in a hurry. What is it going to be like when we have to re-enter at any level?
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be the same. And what is the mental impact of that going to be? Never mind having to deal with children who will be going back to school. There's just a whole factor I see of mental health issues, mental health and emotional issues. I imagine we'll all be really happy to get out, but I don't think that's always true. I think many people right now are getting very comfortable being isolated, and re-entry is going to be hard.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, that is a good point.
I also worry, or think about, I guess I should say, that the new normal, I'm not sure what will be there, right? So I think that's part of the reason many states are so intentional about reopening and protesting government orders, their governor's orders, or governors have decided to, change the orders, lift the orders, because people are really worried about what's going to still be there, meaning jobs, meaning economy, which really, financial issues impact people's mental health in ways that I think most of us can understand, but if you've never been there, it's really hard to understand how devastating and how much that impacts your wellness. And there's just no way that we can avoid what we all don't want to talk about coming down the pipeline, right? There's no way that we can get out from up under the impact of having our entire country shut down for 6 to 8 to 12 weeks. That's going to have a financial impact, and that's going to be people's jobs. I don't want it to be. It just breaks my heart when I think about it. But we don't know what's coming down the pipeline, and we have to be prepared.
Yes, for whatever. Now, again, how do people get in contact with you and the resources that you offer? And I'm definitely interested in the virtual event that you have coming up.
Yes. So our website is a great place. We've been putting out a weekly mental health and COVID-19 newsletter each week, and that can be accessed on our website, which is MHA all spelled out, .org. And because we're doing therapy virtually, even if you are in a different state, we can help you figure out resources in your own community. If you just happen to be listening today and you're thinking, I need support, do not hesitate to either go on our website or call us, 414-276-3122. We talk to people all over the country and get them connected to resources in their community if needed.
All right. So before we wrap up, just a couple more tips for people, so that way, they can begin to, be able to be a little bit more mentally prepared for what's going on, because I think it's important. We don't know what's going to happen, but at the same time, we can't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, it's important that we kind of move with the flow, and learn how to take a situation and find some kind of positivity in it?
So I think we talked a little bit about this. If you have the capacity to virtually connect with others, I suggest cocktails and hors d'oeuvres via Zoom with your girlfriends or gentlemen friends. I encourage people to get out daily and get some fresh air, however that looks for you, whether it's a walk or just sitting outside on your porch for a little bit. I encourage people to figure out what it is they've been missing, whether it's a hobby, whether it's watching a program, a binge watching, that's what you call that. Something that takes you out of your head and helps you to focus on something else. Not everyone has other people living in their home with them, and that's a real concern. So I encourage people, if you know there's people who live alone, to check in on them regularly, at least once a week, if you can do it more. A relative of mine, we never thought of it before, but we've connected via FaceTime, which really just makes a difference. It's different than a phone call. And so just those small ways to let people know that they matter can be really, really encouraging.
Absolutely. And the event that you have coming up, is that going to be on your website?
It is on our website, and I will make sure that you have the link. So it's I Am Not Your Superwoman. Actually, the first, it's May 13th. They're on Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. Central Time. So I Am Not Your Superwoman is May 13th. The following week is May 20th? And then the last one is May 27th. And so I hope that folks can join us. We have the first week, May 13th, I'm actually one of the speakers. But then after that, there's some other wonderful women who will be imparting their wisdom.
Okay. Wow.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm excited. I can't wait.
I'm looking forward to it.
I like the title of it. I'm Not Your Superwoman. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I think so many people need that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, we appreciate you all the time. You know, we love you.
Yes.
Oh, I love being here. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Martina. Just an awesome amount of information. People need it. People are crying for help, even though they're walking around and trying to act like, I've got this. No. So Thank you. And for the empathy and compassion that you show in the way that you speak.
Absolutely.
Word on the street says there's something new at Just Minding My Business Media. You've heard our podcast, Just Minding My Business Radio, that brings news and views you can use. That airs every Thursday at 6 p.m. on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and Spreaker. Well, now you can watch Just Minding My Business. That's right, Just Minding My Business Media now has a TV presence on Raven International TV Network, broadcast on Roku, Fire, and Apple TV. Your business, through Just Minding My Business Media, has exposure on internet radio, major social media platforms, and now TV, through Just Minding My Business dynamic digital marketing platform. Don't listen to the word on the street. Hear it for yourself. Visit jmb.asistercircle.org to learn how you can take your business, your vision, to the next level.
Thank you to the amazing women of A Sister Circle Empowerment Network, ASCEN LLC, and our media partners. Let Just Minding My Business Media promote your business. For information, visit us at jmb.asistercircle.org. That's jmb.asistercircle.org. Voiceovers by RCH VoiceWorks, for when you want to be heard. Call 443-620-4115.
Minding My Business Radio. I'm your host, Ida Crawford.
And I'm your co-host, Ruth Haskins.
We hope you enjoyed the show and appreciate you stopping by. Many blessings to you and yours.